Most people who have experienced trauma don't know it. They just think they're difficult, or broken, or too sensitive. They're not. You know that person who overreacts to small things, who can't let their guard down, who seems to live in a constant state of emergency even when everything is fine? Welcome. If you've ever wondered why you or someone you know responds to the world like it's dangerous even when it's safe, you're about to understand what trauma actually does to the nervous system. Today, we're breaking down the psychology of people who are traumatized. Society tells them to just get over it, to stop being so sensitive, to move on. But psychology reveals something completely different. Their nervous system isn't broken. It's doing exactly what it was trained to do when survival was actually at stake. Here's what most people don't understand about trauma. It's not about what happened. It's about what your nervous system learned from what happened. Think of your body's threat detection system like a smoke alarm. In a normal system, the alarm goes off when there's actual smoke, you address the problem, and the alarm turns off. But trauma rewires the alarm. Now it goes off when someone burns toast, when there's steam from the shower, when there's fog outside. The alarm isn't malfunctioning. It's been recalibrated to detect danger at a much lower threshold because at one point in your life, missing a warning sign meant survival was at risk. Imagine living in a body that experiences a casual conversation as a potential threat, a closed door as a trap, a raised voice as imminent danger. Your rational mind knows you're safe, but your nervous system is screaming otherwise. You're not overreacting. Your body is reacting to a memory that lives in your cells, not your conscious thoughts. This is what psychologists mean when they say trauma is stored in the body. It's not a metaphor. Your autonomic nervous system has learned a pattern, and now it executes that pattern automatically whether the threat is real or not. But here's where it gets more complex. You don't need a single catastrophic event to be traumatized. Trauma can be cumulative. A childhood where you were never safe enough to relax. Relationships where love was conditional and unpredictable. Environments where you had to constantly monitor for danger. These experiences don't create flashbacks or dramatic breakdowns. They create a baseline state of vigilance that feels normal to you because you've never known anything else. Psychologists call this hypervigilance, and it's one of the core signatures of a traumatized nervous system. When your brain learns that the world is dangerous, it doesn't just remember that intellectually. It reorganizes how it processes information. Your amygdala, the threat detection center, becomes oversensitive. Your prefrontal cortex, the rational thinking center, gets overridden more easily. Your body stays in a state of preparation for danger even when you're trying to relax. This is why people who are traumatized often struggle with things that seem simple to others. Relaxing feels dangerous because letting your guard down in the past led to harm. Trusting feels impossible because trust was violated when you were vulnerable. Intimacy feels threatening because closeness once meant pain. These aren't personality flaws. These are survival strategies that your nervous system developed when they were necessary, and they haven't been updated to reflect your current reality. And here's what makes trauma so isolating. The responses that kept you safe in a dangerous environment now make you feel dysfunctional in a safe one. When someone who hasn't been traumatized encounters a stressful situation, their nervous system activates, deals with it, and then returns to baseline. But when someone who is traumatized encounters even a mild stressor, their system doesn't just activate, it floods. The response is disproportionate to the current threat because it's responding to every threat that's ever felt similar. You're not being dramatic. Your nervous system is pulling from a database of past dangers and applying those lessons to the present, even when they don't fit. Now let's talk about something deeper, how trauma disrupts your sense of self. When you experience trauma, especially in childhood or in relationships, it doesn't just change how you respond to the world, it changes how you understand yourself. If the people who were supposed to keep you safe were the source of danger, if the environments that should have been nurturing were hostile, your brain has to make sense of that somehow. And often, the narrative it creates is, something is wrong with me. If the people who were supposed to love me hurt me, it must be because I'm unlovable. If I couldn't prevent the bad things from happening, it must be because I'm powerless. If I didn't respond perfectly, it must be because I'm defective. This is what psychologists call internalized shame. The trauma doesn't just live in your nervous system as hypervigilance. It lives in your self-concept as fundamental unworthiness. You're not just reacting to threats. You're trying to prove you're not the threat. But here's the part that's rarely discussed. These beliefs aren't true, but they serve to function. If you believe you're the problem, you maintain the illusion of control. If it's your fault, then theoretically you can fix it. If it's about your behavior, you can change your behavior and prevent future harm. The alternative, accepting that you were genuinely powerless in a dangerous situation, is too terrifying for a developing nervous system to hold. So it chooses self-blame over helplessness. You weren't too sensitive. You were surviving the only way your nervous system knew how. So what do traumatized people gain from these adaptations? Here's what research shows. People who have processed trauma often develop extraordinary capacities for empathy, pattern recognition, and resilience. Not because trauma is good, but because surviving it required developing skills that others never needed. That hypervigilance that exhausts you, it also makes you incredibly perceptive about social dynamics, emotional undercurrents, and subtle shifts in environment. You can read a room better than most people can read a book. That's not a superpower you asked for, but it's intelligence your nervous system developed. That difficulty trusting, it's paired with an ability to discern who is actually trustworthy and who is performing safety. You're not paranoid. You're pattern matching against data others don't have. But here's the tragedy. These adaptations that helped you survive often prevent you from thriving. The same sensitivity that keeps you safe in dangerous situations keeps you activated in safe ones. The same boundaries that protect you from harm also isolate you from connection. The same self-reliance that got you through traumatic experiences prevents you from asking for help when you need it. You're carrying survival tools into a life that requires different instruments, and nobody taught you how to put them down. Here's what society tells traumatized people. Get over it. Move forward. Don't let your past define you. Just choose to be positive. But what actually supports trauma healing? Acknowledging that your nervous system's responses made sense in context. Understanding that healing isn't about forgetting or forcing yourself to trust. It's about slowly teaching your body that the danger has passed. Society pathologizes trauma responses as weakness or dysfunction. But trauma responses are evidence of strength. Your nervous system did exactly what it needed to do to keep you alive. The problem isn't that you developed these adaptations. The problem is that you're still in survival mode when survival is no longer required. And changing that doesn't happen through willpower or positive thinking. It happens through nervous system regulation. Through repeated experiences of safety, through relationships where trust is earned incrementally, and often through professional support that helps retrain your threat detection system. But here's the critical nuance. Understanding trauma is important, but healing from it usually requires more than understanding. If you recognize yourself in this description, that recognition is valuable. It helps you stop pathologizing your responses and start seeing them as intelligent adaptations. But awareness alone doesn't rewire your nervous system. Here's what to ask yourself. Are your trauma responses manageable, something you're learning to work with and gradually shifting? Or are they controlling your life, preventing you from functioning, keeping you in patterns that cause harm to yourself or others? If it's the first, resources like somatic practices, supportive relationships, and self-education can help. If it's the second, you likely need professional trauma-informed therapy. There's no shame in that. Your nervous system learned these patterns in relationship to threat. It often needs relationship to safety to learn new ones. And some trauma, particularly complex developmental trauma, fundamentally changes brain structure in ways that require specialized intervention to address. So what's actually happening in people who are traumatized? They're not broken. They're not too sensitive. They're not overreacting. Their nervous system learned to detect and respond to danger in an environment where that learning was necessary for survival. And now that system continues to run even when the danger has passed. If you're carrying trauma, your responses make sense. The hypervigilance, the difficulty trusting, the emotional flooding, the shutdown responses, these aren't defects. They're evidence that your nervous system did its job. The work now is teaching it that it can rest. For those of you who've done trauma work, what was the thing that finally helped? And for those still navigating it, what's the hardest part? This is a brave conversation. Let's have it. And if you want to understand the psychology of people who stay disciplined when no one's watching, that's about building trust with yourself when your nervous system makes that difficult. It's connected. One reframe, one rule, one move. Reframe, trauma responses aren't dysfunction. They're your nervous system's intelligent adaptation to real danger that hasn't been updated to reflect your current safe rule. Healing trauma isn't about forcing yourself to trust or relax. It's about creating repeated, safe experiences that slowly teach your nervous system it can stand down. Move. This week, notice when your body goes into threat response. Don't judge it. Just notice it and gently remind yourself, that was adaptive then. I'm safe now.